crazy conspiracy theorist classmate low-key admitted to have contributed to her husband's passing. First and foremost, I like to start off by saying that I'm writing these lines literally during the last days of the year 2023. Therefore, you will probably be reading or watching this much later. In which case, I thank you for taking time from your day to listen to or read what I'm about to relate. Additionally, I'm a woman, I'm not from the US, and I'm 30 years old. Hey everyone. So this is my first post on Reddit ever. I hope this is the right subreddit to submit my story to. I have to premise that English is not my first language, so apologies in advance for any mistakes in this text going forward. With that said, strap in, cause it's gonna be a long post. So where to even begin? In my country, the government decided to push free professional classes to anyone who's either benefiting from welfare or just unemployed. I decided to enroll in one of those classes before moving to another state next year, just to have something more on my curriculum and to have an excuse to touch grass since I'm unemployed. And I specifically picked a social media marketing and management formation that started 3 months ago. Everything was great about it, and it seemed to me all my classmates and professors were great people. I even started to make some new friends. I must point out that no one in my class is underage, the youngest being 21 and the oldest 56. After a couple weeks of classes, they introduced us to the main curriculum of the whole course that will involve a months-long group project among students. The project consists in inventing a brand from the ground up and market it on social media as if that's a real thing about to launch on the market. I was super excited about this, and I couldn't wait to face this challenge. They picked the groups at random, and the random number generator gods chose for me to be paired with a 56-year-old woman. We'll call her M, that barely spoke to anyone up until that point. Thinking she was nothing but a nice lady, I tried to accommodate her for any preferences she would have on the project, such as choosing what the topic would be about. She immediately starts telling me half of her life story, just out of nowhere, and focused particularly about a skin issue she had that she claimed doctors only made worse. And now she cured herself with herbs and essential oils. In hindsight, this was already the first red flag. Her rambling just left me scratching my head. And just to break the awkward silence, I said we could pick that as a brand idea. Natural remedies. Food supplements and cosmetics brand that's not some MLM or a cult. And she immediately agreed and smiled like a little girl, which back then made me kinda happy. After then, she picked the name, idea for logo and motto without asking me for an opinion, saying it felt important to her. Put a pin in this for later. And that since I had no experience with this niche, I should learn from her. She insisted so much I had to comply, and that's when hell started for me. She would call and message me on WhatsApp constantly, insisting to see me work in real time on the designs, logos, mock-ups, etc., cause she needed to supervise my actions. Her excuse being I'm a little girl that hasn't known the world yet. She never liked any of my works and forced me to redo things over and over again. I'm on the spectrum, and I have a very hard time setting boundaries with people or dealing with the idea of displeasing someone. So I kept pushing myself to stay strong and keep going because I couldn't deal with how this woman would have reacted to anything she might have seen as insubordination. On top of the fact I didn't want to fail the course, and from the beginning all our professors insisted the group project was vital to the final score. It's in one of those calls that she starts telling me some of the most unhinged shit I've ever heard in my life. After seeing me drink a sip of an energy drink, she screamed at me to toss that garbage away, and then explains to me the reason why. In her opinion, energy drinks, sodas, and junk food are infested with nanomachines that infect the human body and rewrites their DNA. She then explains that that's because the great powers are not aliens like most think, but androids and AI hive minds, ready to enslave humanity through biochemical control. She also keeps going on about how AIs exist since before Christ, came from an ancient civilization before the Great Reset, and that all great men in history were actually androids or giants. She did go on a great tangent about Nephilims and such. She also threw in the fact that she's sure dinosaurs are nothing but a fairy tale and could have never existed. So, in her opinion, big people can exist, but big birds can't? Lol. The first incident, the biggest one, happened last month. On one weekend evening where instead of slaving away for her, I went out with my mom to visit some friends and be back home the next morning. I forgot my home phone and I realized too late. But since Em and I hadn't agreed to work that night, I thought nothing of it. Oh man, was I naive. My phone was blown up with messages and phone calls. All from M, except a couple messages from another classmate of mine that told me she had called him obsessively with demands of him showing up at my front door to make sure I was okay. He had mentioned before we live on the same block. Later that week, I get called into the school administration because M apparently had called them too and told them that I had gone missing for 3 to 4 days. I tried in vain to keep it together and just bursted into tears in front of the secretaries, telling and showing them all this woman was putting me through, explaining my boundary setting issues, and they decided to immediately inform the profs and find a solution that would have allowed me to not have any more contacts with her. But before they could take any actions, me and M are informed one more student was going to join our group. We'll call him T. Nothing much to say about him. He's super nice and did help out that following week by not complying to M's demands and unreasonable standards, insisting I take time off to do my own things too. For some reason, she never bitched about decisions made by T. In fact, in my last call with M and T, M goes on another unhinged rant. This one will be relevant later, and it's what makes this story fucked up on multiple levels. She claims she's being gang-stalked and sabotaged by Big Pharma because she had invented a miracle ointment that could reconstruct any sort of biological tissue. She said that she tested it on the hand of a friend of hers that had third-degree burns, claiming she saw the nerves, tendons, muscles, and skin grow back, saving the hand. She then added that prototype of said ointment that mostly consisted of garlic and aloe cured her husband from cancer a few years back. She also added like how after an accident over a decade ago, the doctors decided to sabotage her uterus during an emergency surgery to prevent her from having children. More of the big pharma sabotages involved several lawsuits that she was involved in. She concludes that she's taking social media marketing classes with us because she wants to learn how to communicate with social media and the new generations. I'm personally afraid she's gonna try to scam desperate people into buying her bullshit garlic and aloe miracle cure. 2 days later, we get informed that I was swapped from M's group to another one. I will say that I'm finally working with the girl I made friends with, and we're having a lot of good fun. So, well, I thought it was over. No more of M's weird shit, right? 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 Well, the calls and messages from her never ended. Actually, she started obsessively calling the school and profs as well as to protests about the decision of removing me from her group. Her texts were filled with weird, trivial questions about random topics or very personal questions. Up to 50 to 60 texts per day. At this point, I stopped responding almost entirely to her and screenshotting everything she was sending me. This leads us to the third and last incident, at least so far, that happened last week. I can't go too much into detail because it involves geopolitical beliefs and I don't want a war in the comments. The short, clean version of the events is M. In class, asked the prof a question that involved a very important global matter. He replied and then asked us about our opinion. 2 people spoke before I did, giving examples of people or brands getting cancelled for sharing political stances unwisely, and how a problematic or controversial history or presence on social media might impact negatively one's chances of employment. It was only back home I realized M had sent me several rage-filled texts, claiming I was incredibly rude to have answered to her instead of letting the prof answer, and that she was expecting my apologies. I wrote a long text to her explaining myself, told her I would not apologize since I had done nothing wrong, and I blocked her number. She thankfully hasn't been able to find me on social media yet, because I don't use my real name online. Since then, she's been missing all classes, which is nice because I really didn't want her to try and confront me in person. But it's what I've learned today from one of my classmates during break that left me horrified and pushed me to write this post. One of my classmates, we'll call her Y, told me M and her had been exchanging texts from time to time, mostly because Y took pity on M, thinking, like I did at first, she was just some weird, old and lonely lady. In one batch of texts, she goes into detail about her husband that had passed away from cancer a few years back. Some of the texts read, "We fought tooth and nail. We didn't bend over to men or God, but they took him away from me anyway. I was so close to keep him with me. At least I know he trusted me and followed me until the end." These are verbatim, because after putting 2 and 2 together, me and Y figure out in the end she's either of these options. Number 1, delusional and lying about everything. Or number 2, she tried to cure her husband from cancer with her ointment instead of traditional medicine, effectively killing him. Also, we found out she's already selling her services inside a spa belonging to a relative of hers, using the name she picked for our project. She's also been using my work for her personal social media pages involving her services, which explains why she was so obsessive about supervising my work. She was basically getting free commissions out of me. Today was my last day of class before the Christmas holidays, and after that, it's just gonna be 3 more months until classes are over. I don't know where the story will lead me to further, but honestly, I hope she never shows up to class ever again. I'm really hoping to not have to come back with more updates.
Delusional people like this are dangerous. I'm glad you got the school involved and blocked her. She does know a lot about you now though, and has seemed to become rather fixated. I would highly recommend you stay low profile through the end of the semester. You do not want to become the object of a paranoia. Please make sure you always have someone walk you to your car or home and install a security camera at home just in case. I would also make sure to Google your own name occasionally, just to make sure she isn't slandering you or using your identity to her benefit. Good luck.
I do have two classmates that live in my same town that I take public transports with every time I come and go to school, and also have already cameras installed in my home, though I live in a pretty large condo and she lives in a different town. She doesn't know my address, so I don't fully expect her to find me like that. At least, not easily. I don't live alone either. The last piece of advice is something I didn't consider though. Thank you. I'll definitely keep an eye on that.
It is honestly scary to think some people are in a mental state where they cannot separate imagination from reality to the point that they endanger those around them. Take care of yourself, OP. You have done well telling people about this and gathering evidence wherever you could. But as other commenters suggested, try maintaining a low profile now and make sure you are not being stalked both in cyber and real world. People like that, you never know how far they will go. Best festive wishes and hope your program goes well.
As for the people asking me how things are going on, I would like to reply that I was waiting for some more news before making an update on the post. As far as my situation goes, I am doing fine and she hasn't harassed me directly anymore, except for one minor thing. But she went on to harass other people from class, and in pretty disturbing ways too, regarding one person.
Yikes. Yeah, keep those screenshots. Block her app, stay the hell away from her. Jesus, don't take on too much here. I worked in an emergency room for years and it was sadly not uncommon for people with cancer who tried treating it themselves or went to Mexico to show up in the ER when the pain became intolerable. Of course, by then it was too late to do anything but palliative care. We'd see people like that a few times a year. You need to stay away from that person, of course.
Oh, your words are highly appreciated. Here is a little bit of extra information. I gave priority to her because of age and because she had shown before that she is technologically literate. She calls anything electronic as the machine. Her only presence on the internet besides WhatsApp is a Facebook account that she uses as a literal diary. She was going to give very little help in regards to anything involving technology, so in order to have her do something, I let her come up with at least the ideas, since it was no problem for me really until she started showing stalkish behavior. Where I live is pretty behind when it comes to what the rest of the world is doing, and people around their 40s and above are completely alienated from millennials and Gen Z in terms of internet knowledge. I am completely locked out of therapy because it's too expensive and the free programs offer one visit per month. And every time with a different therapist. A literal waste of time, especially when those people show little experience with autistic people specifically. This is also a huge reason why I'm going to leave my country. I'm relying on self-help and personal experiences, including this one now, to push myself out of issues that can lead me to bad places. There is another comment that stated that having an intolerant, power-crazy co-student is not grounds for failing. And to that I say, yes it is! My country's school system is archaic, to say the least, to the point teachers are allowed to verbally abuse you if they want to. To the point teachers are allowed to verbally abuse you if they want to, and you can't do anything about it. This is especially prominent in adult schools and unis, and usually are very laid back when students themselves are abusive, as long as it's not physical. I had a casual chat once with a professor about them not doing anything except boss me around, and she just shrugged it off and said, "If you don't help her, no one will, OP. Try to be patient." Therefore, I'm sorry, but if I'm being selfish for enforcing my own boundaries and limits, then I'm indeed a terribly self-centered one,